Staying alive. Staying alive.
Changala. Changala.
You can tell by the way I... Dude, they sing so high. Bee Gees are awesome. I don't care what anybody says.
You know what that stands for? Bee Gees?
No, what?
Brothers Gibb.
Was that like their last name or something?
Mm-hmm.
Bee Gees.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Kings and Six.
Yes.
Sacramento Kings. I don't know when this podcast will be out, but they probably would have already beat the Warriors by then.
Yeah, that's right. We don't know which
but
way
it's
it's
about
going,
to happen.
But it would be fantastic.
Game 5 is tomorrow.
But, yeah. You want to say anything about that?
I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
That is so awesome.
It's
that you're gonna
crazy.
be there.
The Lord opened a door.
Look, I just think it's great that we made the playoffs and we're learning a lot. The Warriors are amazing. I mean, come on.
The Warriors are amazing.
They're amazing. Love to beat them. The Warriors are amazing.
Love to beat them.
Okay, next. Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. Let's go.
They're in the playoffs as well for the NHL, for the Stanley Cup.
They're playing the Kraken.
Playing the Kraken, and the Kraken tied up the series last night in overtime.
I was watching.
Did you watch it?
I saw
You watched it?
Yeah, I saw it.
It happened like 2 minutes into overtime, right?
Yeah, they just got it in front of the net, and
Man.
it got a little messy in the crease, and they...
Really?
Yep. I
Yeah.
think from what I remember, yeah. It was disappointing because but they also called a penalty on Makar.
Oh, well, the Avs were down 2, tied it up, and by the third, went into overtime. And then the Kraken came out and did that.
I think they're going back to Colorado now,
yeah,
though.
That'd be great.
So
Come on, man. Come on, Avs. Yeah, so what else? What is this? What
well,
are we
it's a
doing?
beautiful time of year. We're in the springtime, so it's playoff basketball, it's hockey playoffs,
We're headed
just-
to 90-degree weather here.
it's going to be we're going to be swimming
Fantastic.
and this is our last episode
Yeah.
of season 1.
Already.
Did you want to take a turn real quick and
Very quickly.
share
I
about
mentioned this in
Israel fast?
Yeah, I mentioned this in the last episode. By the time this is released, we'll be out for a couple weeks into the Isaiah 62 fast. And again, just want to say, hey, if you didn't know anything about it, you're just hearing this for the first time, ask the Lord if you're supposed to jump in on this fast. There's some resources, right, Zach? I think you shared that before.
Isaiah62fast.com. Yeah, man. I mean, they got everything on there. Why Israel? They've got a 1-minute review on why we're fasting. They've got the whole story on there. They've got resources on how to pray for Israel. Then they've got all the different communities around the world that are signing up as prayer hubs that are praying. So there's a lot on there. I would go check it out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Isaiah62fast.com.
Yeah, check that out. That's really good. It's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Sorry, I just went sleepy there for a minute.
I was like,
Right?
Is he here? Did
No,
he
I just got
leave for a
tired
second?
and my stomach started growling. I'm like, man, what's going on?
Best
right
thing you ate this week. Speaking of being hungry,
now? Best thing I ate this week.
I already know what it was for me.
Oh, I had margarita pizza on Sunday.
That pizza was awesome.
I think I ate also on Sunday about 250 donut holes.
250.
Yeah.
That breakfast was good. Eggs were good. That sausage was good. I think my favorite thing was the pizza, though, when we did, that bacon with chicken and, on like a garlic thing with mozzarella. It was just really good.
Yeah.
Super good. That was delicious. Enjoyed that. Yeah. Food is good.
I need some coffee is what I need right now.
Coffee would be helpful. But here we are, last episode.
Yep. Let's do it.
Season 1. What we're talking about today, finally, sorry everybody, is the dream of your heart, knowing Jesus, the dream of your life, really, the dream of your heart.
Mhm.
And I'll just kind of intro us here, and I'll hand it off to you, Dad, to
Okay.
talk a little bit about this. But we have so many dreams that, especially just in our culture we live in, right? I mean, we're told from when we're little, you can do anything if you believe you can, and pursue your dreams and go after your dreams. And
Yep.
It's like, I'm all in for that. I believe that. I think you can do whatever you set your mind to if you're really about it. But we really want, obviously, to obey the Lord in that. So why are we talking about making knowing Jesus the dream of your heart? It's because of this. There's going to be so many other things that pull on you throughout the course of trying to love Jesus. But we want the dream of our heart. The number one thing that we are really always cultivating is the knowledge of him, is knowing him well. Because we have to have oil for our lamp, meaning we have to have, how can you shine your light? How can you be a light to anybody if you don't have oil? Meaning how can you shine your light if you actually don't know who you're following well as your friend, right? And I can think of John 15, abide in me, remain in me, you're my friends if you do what I command. But he's really talking about knowing him. But the verse that I want to read, and then I'll hand it off to you, is this sobering verse in Matthew 7:21-23. It says this: not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. And that verse to me, I think, for me, that brings me comfort. And that might sound weird, but it comforts me because Jesus gives me permission to be solely focused on knowing him. Not being focused on doing all of the spiritual things for him or even in his name. So to me, when I read this verse, I feel like God's going, hey, here's a huge sign of me trying to help you see your life is all about knowing me and me knowing you so that we can be one, which Jesus prays in John 17. He tells us the desire of his heart is that we would be one with him. So as we're wrapping up season 1, I just wanted to talk about what's the dream of your heart? I'm sure you've got dreams to, succeed in your job and have a family and have great impact. But above all of that, you guys, the thing that's going to sustain you is when you prioritize knowing Jesus. That has to be the number one dream of your life and your heart, so that you're not, because that's what you were designed for. And we could talk a lot about that too. But so, that's what's on my mind for the podcast today, is we're talking about all these things. We've talked about reading the Bible. We've talked about fasting. We've talked about prayer. We've talked about, accusation. We've talked about, are we hiding shame? We've talked about all these different things. All of those things actually come back to, really simply, knowing Jesus, knowing him, really, not just knowing about him, not knowing, just memorizing things, but having a deep sense of knowing on the inside. And that to me is the dream of that's becoming more and more the dream of my heart as the Lord talks to me about this, because that sets everything else in order for me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as we're talking about the dream of your heart.
Right. So I've got a couple scriptures before I look at those, I want to just touch on the one you said. It like you said, you read it, Matthew 7, right?
Yep. 21-23.
And you said, it's like the Lord was saying, I'm helping you.
Yeah.
Because the Lord, he says, the negative is, I never knew you.
Painful to consider that.
Meaning the flip side is, you can know me.
Right.
I can know you. You can know who I am. So we were designed that way, like you said. We were also designed to have great impact in the earth. It's good to have other dreams in our lives. But the dream of our heart that satisfies us while we're pursuing the A, B, and C dreams under this main one is what sustains our hearts. Philippians 3, I got 2 verses. Philippians 3.
Love it.
Verse 10. Paul the Apostle says, that I may know him. And here Paul, if you read earlier in chapter 3, he goes through his accolades, his resume.
Right.
But then when it really breaks down for Paul, he's saying, I want to know God. I want to know his Son. Then in Ephesians 3:8, Paul the Apostle says, to me, by the way, he says, I am less than the least of all the saints. this grace was given that I should preach among the Gentiles. This is great. The unsearchable riches of Christ. So Paul the Apostle had something going on in his heart that he cherished. It was all around. His dream was to know Jesus. And remember Paul's life, what he came out of. Much again, what we've talked about during this podcast. Can you imagine the accusation that was hurled at Paul, that Satan hurled at Paul for murdering Christians?
Oh, intense.
So intense. Like Satan bringing up Paul's past, which Paul addresses that. Therefore, there's now no condemnation.
Man.
I'm pressing forward. I'm pressing on.
Wow.
All about the dream in my heart is I'm pursuing that man, Jesus. His unsearchable riches. Not only am I pursuing it, but that's the gospel message that I'm preaching. You can know the unsearchable riches of Christ. It's not just about getting in the door, getting born again, being in heaven. It's searching out the unsearchable riches, which tells me something about pursuing the dream of our heart. It's not so much the attainment of the dream. It's pursuit.
Yeah.
And in the word pursuit, that means there's a lot of things that take place in the pursuit. While I'm going after my dream, which, like you said, it's my prayer that my dream is God. I'm not settled there today that it all the way is. I mean,
we
my
have to
prayer
fight to keep it in its proper place.
That's right. We have to fight to keep it in its proper place, because I'm asking him to be the dream of my heart, and I'm not even sure if I even say it that way. It's just the title we're using and the subject we're using today. But I want to know the unsearchable riches of this man Jesus, and I want that to be the dream of my heart. Because we've all tasted of lesser things that are like, let's say we have something that we're going after in the natural. I want to start a business. I want to own this car. I want to own this house. I want to have this much money in the bank. Well, you do that. It's attainable. And there's nothing wrong with those things. Like, I want to plant a church. I want to start a ministry. I want to go overseas and preach the gospel. It's the dream of my heart. Those are awesome things, God-given.
Good things.
Phenomenal things. But at the end of the day, Paul the Apostle, who had a resume better than everybody, he goes, you guys, I just want to know him.
Yeah.
Because that's what brings complete fulfillment in our lives.
Yes.
So when I think about that secondly leads me into the fact that I want to be in pursuit of this. As long as I'm in pursuit of it, it's fantastic. Life is good as I'm in pursuit of it.
And God's not going to he's not going to tease you.
Right.
Right? Like, sometimes that's what we're like, okay, I'm doing it, Lord, I'm going. He's like, the Lord's excited about it.
Yeah.
But it's a journey and it's a process. Just don't lose heart. Keep your eyes fixed on me. But this is what I think about Paul. This is what excites me when you're talking. It's Philippians 3:8. He says this, "Yet indeed I also count all things lost for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus. For my Lord, for whom I've suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ." So if you're sitting here today, and I've heard people say this, sometimes some people, well, aren't you supposed to go do things for God? Like, it's like, well, yeah, but let's look at Philippians 3:8 really quick too. Like, Paul said he considers everything else trash compared to the knowledge of Christ.
Everything.
So, and then we have Jesus telling us, hey, I didn't know you. Even though you healed people, you cast out demons in my name, he goes, I never knew you. So what is God shouting? And then the way that Paul describes the knowledge of God, like you said, like the glorious riches, right? We have to pay attention to what God is shouting. He's like, you were made to know me. That is the highest privilege you have, is that you get to share in knowing who God is. Everything else, even those good things that you accomplish in your life, even the dreams you accomplish in your life, those things are considered rubbish. Like, Paul would look at those and goes, hey, you became a millionaire and became a doctor and you did all that good stuff and you taught kids and, you preached the gospel and that's really good. And you've got a cool podcast. Okay. He goes, Paul would go, all that compared to the knowing Jesus, rubbish. And knowing Jesus isn't just being saved. I just want to make that distinction too. Knowing Jesus isn't just being saved or confessing faith in him. It's actively knowing him. And that verse hits me. And then the other one hits me too is Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Like, what a great question to ask ourselves regularly. Lord, and ask the Lord, where is my treasure? Are you my treasure? Or are there other things, and I don't even think it's wrong for you to have I would say my family and friends are my treasure. And I think that's a good thing. So I don't even think that it's wrong for us to have treasure in our heart in things.
Correct.
But what really though, what's the ultimate treasure? Where's my heart found? Is it in knowing him? Is it in searching him out, knowing him? That's what we're saying. That's what the prayer of our heart is, that he would be my treasure and the dream of my life, to know him, to really know him, not at a distance.
Right. So as we have other dreams that we're pursuing in our life, I'm going to do both here. We can know God through those other things.
That's good.
I want to get married. I want to have children. I want to start a business. Or maybe you just want to be faithful in your job. Maybe you're not a business owner. You go somewhere and you work for another person. You're like, I would just want to love God in the midst of that and want to be faithful to God. And we can know God through those things and we can know him and make that the dream of our heart when we're doing time with our husband or our wife, at work, with our family. I remember when you and Spence were young, just before Spencer was born, we were living in the Springs, in Colorado Springs, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I worked in the church, and then I worked outside the church in a sales job. And my paradigm, my understanding at the time was, if I'm in ministry, then I'm successful with God. And the Lord had to teach me something else. He had to say, hey, you're still going to be in ministry full time, but you're also going to be doing another occupation to provide for your family, your young family. And it was a sales job, outside sales. And I can again, I might have mentioned this in one of the episodes, but I just remember walking and making what they would call cold calls and, knocking on doors of businesses. And I spent most of my days just doing that. And I remember then that I could pursue God and I could make God, to use this language, the dream of my heart, even through that, while I was being faithful to get up in the morning, go to an early morning prayer meeting, get out of the prayer meeting, go to work, talk to people all day long about something maybe I cared a little bit about, but I knew it was the assignment of God. But in it, I could make him the dream of my heart. I could know him in the midst of it. I could know him and experience his heart for me while I was talking to people. And so I think it's important to give people that are listening today hope that, well, I just don't get to go to a house of prayer, you guys, and be in a prayer room and open my Bible and talk to Jesus for X amount of hours. No, you don't have to do that to have God the dream of your heart.
Right.
You can do that at work right now, wherever you are, whatever's going on in your life. He can be the dream of your heart, and you can experience and encounter him in that place. Yes, based upon all the things we've been talking about, but in these episodes, how God thinks about us, feels about us, and our shame. But I think one of the keys to just sticking around at a marathon pace is having God as the dream of your heart. You mentioned that in the beginning. So
yeah. He can't just be the breakthrough you're hoping for in your life is not going to sustain you. Because as soon as you get one breakthrough, you'll just want another breakthrough.
Correct.
Meaning, and the reason I'm saying that might seem like it's kind of random, but because I think a lot of times that's how we're wired is, like for me, I'm aching for and longing for the discovery of more of who God is and how he thinks and feels about me and his love for me and his plans for me and how wonderful he is. And because he's in me, he lives in me, he's with me, he loves me, I'll never search that out to the end. Like that's always the thing that I know will satisfy me. Always. versus breakthrough, which is really great. But once you have one breakthrough, you're just like, oh, well, okay. But the beauty of God, it is revealed to you more and more and more. And I think that we have to, in order to be sustained, we have to have a higher vision than just, I just want to obey and, I just want to have a decent life. It's like, well, you were made for so much more on the inside, and you can experience that working 60 hours a week. You can experience that raising a family. You can experience that doing the things that God's also asked you to do, but he's never asked you to abandon making him number one, right? Which it comes back to the great commandment, the greatest commandment, which is what? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. What does that mean? Well, what does it mean to love your wife or your husband or your friends with all your heart? You spend time with them. You talk with them. You encourage them. You tell them what's going on in your heart. You're vulnerable with them. You ask them to forgive you. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's all loving people. And the Lord's like, I want that with you. I want you to experience that with me. That's what's going to satisfy you, is when you experience what I have to give to you. And, and sometimes I think we get afraid because we're like, well, if I make that number one, will I like drop off in these other areas of my life? And it's like, not a chance. Not a chance.
Right.
Like, God will give you grace to be successful at those other dreams if he's the treasure of your heart.
Right. When I'm thinking about the verse you read about Paul counting everything rubbish.
Yeah.
He wasn't saying they were garbage. He just put them in the right perspective.
Comparing. When you compare it to knowing Jesus.
Right.
That's right.
So I just want to say that too. These thoughts come to my mind while we're sitting here talking. For folks that are listening, we're not saying that the other things are garbage.
Not at all.
But when God's a dream of your heart, everything else comparatively, they just take that second place. And we can encounter God through all those things. That's what I'm thinking about, the knowing him in the midst of my relationships, knowing him in the midst of my marriage, knowing him in the midst of being a father or a mother or a brother or sister, because then we're positioned right in all those dynamic relationships.
Right.
We're not in idolatry toward our husband or our wife, our children, meaning that we're so just idolatry, where we're so concerned about them constantly, how they think about us. We can love freely when God's the dream of our heart.
Yeah. Yeah, love freely, love rightly, be satisfied.
Yeah.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I think about that. It means when I'm in touch with who he is in my life, I'm not coveting.
Right.
I'm not wanting. What a liberation in America to live not wanting.
Right.
Like everyone, including myself, there's always something new that I could want, or that I do want. I've got a list of things that I want, right? Which is, again, that's not bad, but you think about where, it's right in front of us. The treasure is right in front of us, and we all have the same access to it. No, it's not like some people have greater access to knowing Jesus than we do, or than someone else does, right? We all have the same amount of access to knowing him.
Yeah.
And God tells us, he goes, I'm wanting you to know me, make me the dream of your heart, so that, because all those situations you mentioned, actually, God has set up everything in our life to reveal him to us. Nature, relationships, money, jobs, labor, parties. I mean, you name it, animals. All of those things, right. If you're fixed on, I've got to know this wonderful man,
so
Jesus,
good. Yeah.
Everything in your life will show you more of who he is. So it's not like I got to be a monk and I got to go lay in a room and just talk to God and not say,
right.
not be seen for hours. And that's not it.
That's
We're
right.
saying,
that's correct.
What is the priority of your heart? Because when that's set right, and you're determining that you want to know him,
so good.
Then you're really set right. And it's also, I think of Mary and Martha. Martha's running around anxious, worried, trying to do the right thing to take care of Jesus and the disciples in her house. And I think I would have probably felt a lot like Martha too. Like, I mean, think about it. You've got Jesus coming to your house. You're probably going to run around trying to make things nice. And Jesus just goes, hey, Martha, there's one thing needed. It's you knowing me, really. I mean, he goes, you just recognizing who I am, and you don't have to go do all that stuff for me.
Right.
Like, I just think about how kind Jesus is to go, you don't have to do all that. Like, just come hang. Like, sometimes I think that's what the Lord does with us. He's like, you're so busy doing all these things for me, but you don't even, he's like, why don't you just come spend time with me? Just be with me. And I think that that's what we're getting at, is if you really want to go the distance on this thing, I think you need to know that the priority is that Jesus doesn't want you just getting busy for him. He wants you to really know him. And when you really know him, you will be lit on fire, and you'll go do a ton of stuff with him rather than for him. You'll do it with him. Mm-hmm. And that's way more effective, way more enjoyable. You're not doing it to prove something. You're doing it because you love and you know him, and you're doing it with him, not for him, but with him.
Yeah.
And we are his servants, but he also calls us his friends too. So all these thoughts are flooding to my mind, but it just kind of reinvigorates me to go, what is the dream of my heart? Where is my treasure? I've got all these responsibilities, all these good dreams that I want to accomplish with God, for myself, with family, all these things. But at the end of the day, how do I prioritize? Mm-hmm. Seeking and knowing him is really what will satisfy me, like Paul talks about in those verses we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so good. So here we are, the last episode 12, and talking about God being the dream of our heart.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I think it's a good way for us to kind of close out these episodes, and hopefully that folks have enjoyed just being a part of it. We're glad that you can. Yeah, thanks for listening to us, and
we'll gear up for season 2, and get into some deeper topics and fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and probably have a few other guests on, and it's gonna be good as we move forward with it. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that's joined us, that's been a part and listened, and we so appreciate you. And I want to pray for everybody as we conclude this last episode for the first season. So, Father, thank you for every person that's watched, listened. Lord, we ask that you would give them a greater vision for what it is you're doing in their hearts. Even as we talk about you being the dream of our heart today, let that be the foundation of our lives as we pursue our calling and assignment and the things that you've put in us that are right, that you have said yes to in our lives, whether it be family, businesses, ministries, whatever it is, Lord, you're calling us to. Let this one thing, that I may know him, be the dream of our hearts, like Paul the Apostle said, that we might know the unsearchable riches of Christ. Father, I pray for every person today, and I bless them in the name of Jesus, and we thank you for each one in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Peace out.
Just stick around.